Something strange is happening here at the doors of the Bonner Hall in June 2016. The staff and students of Dundee University have came together to protest against the university's austerity measures. The management here seem willing to go down to the last bullet in order to improve the university's financial situation. And whilst compulsory redundancies may be the last shot in the chamber, the threat of job losses has become more and more palpable.
No ifs, no buts, no education costs. No ifs, no buts, no education costs.
Unfortunately, what we have to accept is that if we can't do it without compulsory redundancy, we may need to lose some staff. But from where I'm sitting right here, right now, the maximum number of staff we'd have to lose would be 3.
I've been here 18 or so years. I've never seen anything like it.
And people feel just not supported, not being taken seriously enough, and being seen as easily disposed of. And they're afraid for their jobs, so compulsory redundancies are absolutely unacceptable. So there are also so-called heritage languages, so that's an important term to understand. So in Scotland, in Gaelic, and also Scots. Yeah. Gaelic is a Celtic language, and Scots has.
Reported to have the best educated population in Europe, Scotland is a centre for world-class teaching and research. Every year, over 200,000 students enroll one of the many higher or further education institutions in Scotland. Dundee University alone welcomes students and staff from over 60 different countries and has recently been ranked in the top 1% of world universities. However, it's not been all good news.
An Audit Scotland report in July 2015 found that the current budgetary position of Scottish universities was unsustainable. For instance, since 2010, the Scottish higher education budget has been cut by 6%. Furthermore, Scottish universities only receive 90% of the cost of teaching both Scottish and EU students. Over the last 3 years, Scottish universities have been forced to make £200 million worth of efficiency savings. So, how is our university coping with this situation? Let's go see who we can talk to.
For a number of years, there's been a process whereby the university has sought to drive down teaching costs, primarily through staff costs, in order to boost the income into the surpluses in the university that can go towards subsidising research.
Dundee University does a lot of world-class research, as you know, but a lot of that research is funded by charities such as Wellcome, such as Leverhulme, and these charitable research funds don't come with overheads, so the university needs to pull in more students to pay for that, and that causes a bit of friction in the budget. So it's a big challenge for Dundee University at the moment, but I speak regularly with the principal and with senior management, and my understanding is that they are making strides to really get on top of that.
In the last year, for the budget for this year, the overall cut to the sector was 3.6%, and that applied to University of Dundee just because of our subject mix and other things of that kind. The relationship between research and teaching came down to 4% for the university. So that meant that within our budget for the year, we had to cope with a greater than 9% shift in the relationship between our income from government sources and the basic costs to the university. And we've just had a report from Audit Scotland, which is an organisation funded by the Scottish Government, which is at arm's length from government and reports independently on the financial position of publicly funded bodies. And the conclusion of the Audit Scotland report was that Scottish universities are very, very well managed, very well led, have a strong financial position, but looking forward are not financially sustainable. And the reason for that is because the income for all of these sources is now falling behind the costs. So that for every Scottish student that we recruit, we only recover around about 90% of the cost of that student. Now clearly, you can't have a situation where you don't recover 100% of the cost for every activity that you carry out.
From who we've spoken to so far, it is obvious to see the university is under substantial financial pressure. We heard Pete Downs say that the Scottish Government has cut the block grant given to Dundee University. And we tried contacting the Scottish National Party, who are in power, but they refused to speak with us.
Over the last 4 years. Now, we will renew this commitment, investing a further £1 billion in 2016-17 to support the continued success of our world-class universities, delivering high-quality learning and research excellence.
And will invest over £1.6 billion in higher and further education. Let no one be in any doubt, from birth and the earliest years through school and beyond, education is this government's #1 priority.
Well, the Scottish Government has tax raising powers and all its powers at its fingertips, and it's very much up to the SNP administration and the Scottish Government what they want to spend their money on. Their argument that their hands are tied, that it's a fixed budget, is actually about 10 years out of date now. For instance, at the last election, we went into the election in May as the Labour Party saying that we would ask people who can afford it to pay a bit more in tax to make sure that our public services, including universities, that their funding is sustainable.
Is there evidence to suggest that the 50p rate of tax would raise enough to cover the shortfall in higher education budgets?
Well, when we proposed the 50p rate of tax, we did a lot of work behind that, and we believe that it would. And when you propose any new fiscal measure, there's naturally a variety of different opinions from experts and different think tanks and all these different people involved. We believed that it would raise more money, and we believed it was the fair thing to do, and it was a contract with the voters to ask people who could afford it to pay that little bit more to fund their public services. So, as I said, it's a conversation, an ongoing conversation with the voters about what standard of public service you want.
The SNP see that education is a top priority. Yet, when we spoke to Pete Downs, we learned the university is under increasing pressure and its budget is still being cut.
I am not convinced after meetings with...
And on the other hand, when I spoke to Jenny Mara and asked her about the HMRC and Institute for Fiscal Studies, she struggled to find any evidence that Labour's 50p tax policy would work. Instead, Miss Mara insisted that the policy was fair and just that it would work. And when I asked Miss Mara about Westminster's cuts to Holyrood, she said that this argument was 10 years out of date and that Holyrood now had additional tax raising powers. So when I asked her what other policies Labour might have to help higher education in Scotland, she never named any specific policy. So if the government isn't willing to help universities in Scotland, then what can they do themselves and at what cost?
Because teaching subsidises research, universities need a big teaching cohort of students, undergraduate, postgraduate, in order to bring in that fee income.
So the one area of income I didn't explain in response to that question is unregulated fee income. And unregulated fee income comes from students, mostly those who come to this university, some who study abroad, for example, through distance learning, and they pay a fee to the university for that education. That fee income is the only source of funds that universities in Scotland currently have that provides income in excess of what we calculate to be the cost. And therefore it places a great emphasis on income generation from unregulated fees. In other words, our overseas students.
The problem all universities are facing is there's a limit to the number of students they can get in. It's either limited because there's a cap from the Scottish Government, or because the British Government increasingly makes it difficult for international students to get visas, or because fee costs and debt are rising for English students and our UK students, discouraging those from coming. So as research costs rise, it puts pressure on universities in terms of the amount of surplus they can get out of the teaching areas. And in Dundee specifically, we've got very high cost research areas in terms of obviously the biomedical sciences, and the limitation on growing the size of the undergraduate population is what's creating some of this problem that Dundee has faced for a number of years.
These cuts to the higher education sector and to Dundee University itself almost seem to be cyclical. So what effect does that have on staff and students when it seems that every couple of years there'll be cuts again?
So the cyclical element comes from the investment decisions that universities make. And what's the investment decision? Is how do I make my university better than the one next door? So I spend lots of money on this building rather than that building, and I spend more and more money in these overheads that I think students value. I think they value a nice shiny building, or I think they value a really nice swanky student union. And how do you pay for that? You pay for it by the things you think students don't value: classes, lectures, staff, books in a library. They are the things that then start coming under pressure. And the cyclical element comes in the fact through this race and this competition between all universities trying to essentially capture a bigger share of this pie that they think it exists.
Staff feel under constant threat. In some cases, we have staff being put under the spotlight again and again in 1, 2, 3 year cycles.
I've been here for 18 or so years. I've never seen anything like it.
Every year, as far back as 2010, the press and some members of Dundee University's management have warned of possible redundancies.
I mean, just to make the union's position very clear, we have no problems with voluntary severance schemes, but we are very concerned when staff are being put under stress and they're afraid for their jobs. So compulsory redundancies are absolutely unacceptable.
Unfortunately, what we have to accept is that if we can't do it without compulsory redundancy, we may need to lose some staff. But from where I'm sitting right here, right now, the maximum number of staff we'd have to lose would be 3.
Warnings they now seem determined to forget.
There were additional savings that were required to be made in social sciences and in humanities and biomedical sciences. And it was our stated goal that we wanted to achieve those savings without having recourse to redundancy. And the good news is that we achieved that across all those different areas.
With Sir Pete Downs having said that redundancies were never on the agenda, and James Livesley having previously said different, it appears that no one here in Dundee is reading from the same script. So to achieve some clarity, we submitted a freedom of information request. And we're here today again to speak to Carlo Morelli about the information that we received.
So what Dundee's got here is a series of voluntary severance and some redundancies, not many, but mainly voluntary severance of people leaving the university through a series of restructuring, coming at the cost of, I think, over the past 5-6 years, it's around £11 million in total. Pretty quickly, the university's found that it can't deliver the programmes it wants to with this reduced staffing levels. So the university has had to recruit new staff to replace the old ones that have gone. So if you look at the staff numbers in the university over the past 5 or 6 years, there's some fluctuations, but it's on a rising trend. So we've got a cycle going on in the university whereby a series of cuts come in, staff numbers are reduced, pressure is increased in terms of stress on those remaining, and then new staff are appointed to replace the old ones that went. And from a union perspective, we think that's a waste of money in terms of the expenditure on voluntary severance, and B, it does nothing for the students and the staff who remain.
With the budget shortfall in mind, are the new staff being brought on cheaper or on worse contracts?
There's a mix. In the short term, they're certainly on worse contracts because the staff shortages that emerge because of the restructuring are compensated by short-term contracts, hourly paid contracts, and an attempt to try and cover up staffing shortages. And the saving is simply the difference between a younger, newer member of staff and an older member of staff at the top of the scale. But pretty quickly, those differences become pretty small because younger members of staff go up the scale within 11 years. You go from bottom to the top of the lecturing scales. So there's not a big saving there. And the costs of making that saving are pretty enormous.
What do you think? There's some hints to the name. Finnish, very good. And Estonian. Yeah, if you take a note of that. Finnish, Hungarian and Estonian are related. There's generally a feeling of lack of trust in management. Staff feel highly stressed, unsupported. Staff especially who have undergone the process of being put under consideration for potential redundancies, especially are suffering very, very strongly from that. So many people are off sick, people feel much more stressed in their jobs, people feel humiliated, degraded, not valued in their jobs. People do not take, in many cases, their full holidays. They're working very long hours, working weekends. It is a disgraceful situation, really.
There have been meetings between the university and the union where the union has been telling the university some people are extremely ill because of what's going on, and trying to explain to the university that they have a duty of care towards the staff. And we've, as a union, have never seen anything like this, and it's getting very, very serious.
There's staff members who feel like the workload model and the work-life balance is slightly imbalanced at the minute. And is there any assurances you can offer them and the students that they teach?
The first thing I'd say is that the savings that I talked about at the start of the discussion, together with the fantastic advances that the university has made, that's been delivered by enthusiastic staff. It's not been delivered by me. It's been delivered by staff who must be motivated and must be, and I think are showing every sign of being positive about the future of the university. And I don't mention the success stories to divert the attention away from what might be criticised. I'm mentioning that because my experience is that people who feel they're in a successful environment are generally motivated and relatively less stressed. I think those factors will have a huge influence on people's attitude and particularly their motivation and enthusiasm for the work that they do.
As students here at Dundee University, we cannot help but be concerned about our futures too. As the university sticks to unsustainable investment strategies, whilst full-time academics are gradually replaced by young and inexperienced staff on precarious contracts. And furthermore, lecturers and tutors here are feeling the strain of a redeveloped workload model. It is not just staff morale, but the quality of our education that's at stake here.
They were like, oh, apparently there wasn't going to be another round of cuts, they were just bringing people in to kind of warn people, but that was terrifying. At the time, it was massive. You had students going into fourth year whose dissertation advisors may no longer be there, and like that's incredibly important because if you're in fourth year and you're specialising in history, you could no longer specialise in that because your lecturer might not be there. In terms of modules, it's never guaranteed that your module will run. You need a certain number of people. So it's horrible the fact that 2 Scottish history modules were cut because the lecturers were no longer there to deliver them.
So having class sizes of less than 15 is seen as a bad thing in university. It's seen as something that's uneconomic. So class sizes much bigger than 15 are where the university is going to. And the student experience, the student educational, genuine education, is impacted by that.
So, if you were in Pete's position in the principal's office, what changes would you make to try and close that £8 million funding gap?
I mean, you can't get away from the fact that the university was in like a serious case where we needed to make money. However, at this point, this is when everyone in senior management took a pay rise. I think Pete himself took one of the largest pay rises out of any of the Scottish universities' principals, and to me it seems through the restructuring of this university, which is what has largely got us in this situation, is that these aren't actions which really deserve the pay rise in any way, shape or form.
Well, the solution has to be a political solution. I think that seems to be, and I think our university management needs to also to lobby the political powers. It is a much wider issue. It cannot be resolved just in one institution. However, having said that, I think that there is an awful lot which can be done to make changes in a way which are not threatening to staff.
Instead, what they need to do is invest in the staff and in the students, in the education provision, because that's what's going to build the university in terms of what ultimately the university does need, which it needs to cross-subsidise research.
The world of university finance is indeed a confusing place. And caught in the middle of this are the staff. They have been promised that there will be no more redundancies, but the facts seem to suggest otherwise. One thing we do know for certain is that staff here refuse to swallow the tales of growth and success. Instead, they are coming to terms with the uncertainty that surrounds their professional futures. Will there be no more redundancies, or is this the calm that precedes yet another storm?
So I think, yes, I think it's absolutely clear that there have been repetitive cycles in which I think people could be forgiven for believing we're never going to get to escape velocity from this particular problem. But we're shifting very clearly from a savings mode to a growth mode. Now, that says to me that we're on the right track and we can pursue this, and we can pursue an approach which anticipates growth and is prepared to invest in growth.
One of the lessons in life one learns is that to be able to express concerns, to use the democratic right to protest, to bring about change and to support others who are seen to be in distress. And I think that's hopefully also a lesson which students then can see in action and apply themselves.
Get everyone you know, get everyone you know outside. I'll fucking open the windows and we'll make sure that not just Dundee hears us, fucking Abertale hears us.
Again, what's it about? It's about reducing the cost of this thing called education, and in order to provide a bigger surplus that can be then used elsewhere in the university. Some of that is to research, some of it is to pay for these buildings, some of it is to pay for managerial managers in the university, very high paid ones, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, not just at Dundee, but across the university sector, these transitions. And that's why I think it's important students understand what's happening at Dundee is not just about Dundee, it's part of the wider university system, and it's about essentially what we're trying to do is not just simply defend this course or this staff member or this student experience, but it's trying to defend what it means to have a higher education system in the UK and why that's a valuable thing worth defending.